our high school kids come in, and the first thing that they're doing is they're going right to the manila folder. Where's my paper? And then they have all their data, they have all their maxes, they have all their lifts that they have laid out. And you have to do work on the front end, but now you have that full season built out that you can use next year, and you just tweak it and refine it based off of your kids. Feel weird with you guys so far away from me in the room. So the big thing that we're going to talk about is this large group management, and I think just from an overarching perspective, if we think through the lens of we're all trying to manage high school kids, middle school kids, right? So my first slide, I want to go into what that kid is like, what the struggle you have when you're going to be dealing with these kids. But also a lot of the positives around dealing with high school kids too, because I think being so young and naive to a point, they're like sponges, right? They're a little bit more open to learning, and I think that if we know how to manage a group, I think it can be really beneficial. And I even want to, pitching this, it's not even so much this large group that I think is important, but I think it comes down to managing your time as a coach, appreciating the aspect of being the coach. And I'll even say when I hear coaches talking about kids, like, I talked about this a little bit yesterday, where coaches will complain about kids and they're annoying, they're lazy, they're entitled. I own a business, and we've got a lot of employees, and I can tell you right now that adults are a lot harder to deal with than kids. So take that for what it's worth, because I think it is beneficial to be with kids more so than adults. And if there's any administrators in here, you might relate to me on that one. Now, if we're thinking about high school kids, middle school kids, I think I tried to put in here where there's a negative, right? Like they can be distracted. Kids are distracted, and they're at the same time of being distracted, they might be aggressive, which I think can be a positive if we're able to harness that aggressiveness and that energy into some type of positive impact. They never stop talking, right? So they're the kid that I was this kid that I would just never shut up. Dr. B, my throws coach, used to call me the American radio, because I would go to practice and just want to talk and say things constantly and ask weird questions, ask him about the Soviet Union and politics and shit like that. So it was always really fun. But kids are the same way. They never stop talking, okay? They do want to be really good. And I think a lot of them wanting to be really good oftentimes has a negative side in the fact that they're comparing themselves, to one another at that age a lot, as we all do. But they also want people to like them, and they want to impress a lot of people. And that's where I think if we take those things and harness this, it leads to better management long term of the group. And I think it's just being aware that, like, these kids, they want you to like them. They want you to be a good coach. They want you to help them along the way because they want to be good. They don't come out to throw to annoy you. And I think that's a really big thing to keep in mind is, like, they're not there to be a pain in the ass. You might think that a lot of times, but they're there to actually be good. And I think having a little bit of that empathy and compassion and checking yourself when you do want to punch them in the face is one of those things where it's like, all right, I got to calm down and take a step back. They're annoying, yes, but they want to be good and they're with you for a reason. So I think with that group management, there comes this immediate result of you're going to have better culture, okay? Meaning somebody's going to come into your space, into your area where you're coaching, and they're going to be able to feel the intensity. They're going to feel the productive aspect of that management. I think I always share this story. I went to Patriots spring or summer training, I guess it would be fall camp before the 2008 football season. And I went and watched, so Randy Moss was there at the time, Tom Brady, obviously, Bill Belichick. This is like the heyday of the New England Patriots. Actually, it might have been 2009. And one of the things that I was blown away by was how operative the whole process was. It was every 5 minutes and 30 seconds they went to a new station. Okay, every single 5 minutes and 30 seconds, a timer would go off and they were moving. And these are the best in the world that are on a clock. and they are paid millions and millions of dollars to be on a clock and to be dialed in, and they move to the next spot. And it might even be within the same space that they're on that clock, but once that clock goes, they move into the next task. And that was one thing that I took with me, long term, was I think that if the best of the world are managing that way, that's something that we can learn from, and that as far as the culture is then recognized, is that when you're in that space, you're going, holy crap, this is really well organized, it's very intentional. And, I don't know what the timing was or what the science behind that specific time was, but it obviously led to more success. And I think another aspect that I'm going to pitch here with the throwing management is, as an employer or as somebody who works in a company, oftentimes if we're doing work and we feel like it's not being observed, or the owner or the boss isn't seeing your effectiveness in the company, it's probably because they're not measuring your success. It's probably because they're not measuring your efforts. And that's a big aspect, I think, around group management, is that if we measure things that matter, then we can show the kid the progress that they're making, and they immediately start to buy in a little bit more, because now things are getting measured and success is much more apparent. It's apparent to you and it's apparent to them. And then ironically, you can also tell their parents or your athletic director how many PRs you've hit or how many feet you've added throughout the season. And those things add up long term to the buy-in and to the culture. And so for me, I have an acronym that I like to use. I am corny with stuff like this, where I love acronyms. It's like I also have a bad memory at times, so it does help me with this. And I think that if we look at what culture is, I believe it's trust, expectations, accountability, and then matrix is the last word that I had to come up with to make that team corniness. But essentially, if we look at trust, it's when a kid comes to practice, do they believe in you? Do they trust you? Are you reliable? Do you show up on time? Do you have a plan? Are you competent? Have you proven out that you've had success in the past? And then do you share the vision? Are you communicating to that athlete, hey, I want you to throw 40 feet. I want you to throw 30 feet. I want you to throw 50 feet. And with expectations, are you clear and specific with where you're going? Okay, so are you very, very clear with, this is how practice will be structured, this is how many reps I expect from you, and this is the specific way that I want you to get this done. Okay, this is really, really important. Okay, accountability. This is where, responsibility, having these assessments, or having the ability to measure things. And I have consequences in here as part of accountability. Consequences typically has a negative connotation, but I believe that consequences can be very, very positive. If you're training 5 days a week and you're throwing 3 to 5 days a week and you're lifting 3 to 5 days a week, the consequence is usually going to be that you get really good. And it's being clear on that. And then finally, the matrix aspect is that empathy of everything, the emotional availability, and being able to problem solve in the moment with these athletes, with these kids, is huge. And I think that, when you look at this specific acronym, it's like taking this, and then when you do have a kid that is annoying or that isn't listening, that is possibly disruptive, it's just use this as a way to recenter yourself. Okay, so if you were here yesterday, I talked about my principles, and the principles that I have, I have the 5 principles of, like, this is my rule book or my guide for my coaching style, for my coaching approach, and how I want to impact the athletes that we have. And principle 4 and principle 5 were my principles around throwing and my principles around the physical aspect or the actual lifting. And so principle 4 is technical clarity paired with aggressive execution. Principle 5, this is around the physical aspect, that's being explosive, strong, and mobile. And the reason why I'm sharing these is that when it comes to group management, it's really in the throwing realm, that's all that matters. We're trying to get them to be better throwers and to be more physically developed as throwers. Okay, so really that's what we're trying to hone in on. And that's why yesterday I had provided the standards and the actions of my principles. So when I'm looking at this, principle 4 would be, what's related to throwing. We're going to throw, we're going to do drills, we're going to study film, we're going to visualize, we're going to write notes, we're going to listen and think about cues. And then principle 5 actions would be, okay, we're going to focus on strength, explosiveness, mobility, a little bit of size as well. And this is where we're going to pull from when we're trying to build out the management aspect of the session. And so what I'm going to do now is I want to go into specific throwing sessions, specific lifting sessions, and even like a combo aspect of this. So how can we best plan for practice? And a lot of this stuff we talked about yesterday even is like, what kind of throws day are we doing? Who was here yesterday? Okay, most of you guys. What do you remember the types of throws days that I had? Anybody remember one style? Slam day, yeah. What was the other one? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so if perfect. So that's where I'm talking about. If that we get into a session, what's the goal for today? Okay, if you think back to the acronym, if you have someone coming in, what's the throws day? Do your athletes know what the throw day is? Is it a slam session? Is it a mock meet? Is it a drill throw day? Is it a range day? Okay, what is that specific day? Okay, one thing, again, I as painful as it is to applaud the football community, a lot of football coaches will have specific days where they focus on like, okay, first and second down is Monday and Tuesday. Okay, third down is Wednesday, special teams is Thursday, Friday's a walkthrough, Saturday's a game. So they have very specific days. We can take that and say, okay, day 1, we're going to do, the slam day. Day 2, we're doing the range day. Day 3, we're going to do, drill throw day. And then once the season starts and you have dual meets, you start to factor that into your weekly schedule. But now the kids know what the weekly schedule is. So they know on a Tuesday what they're expecting when they come to practice. Okay, they know what the cues are and how many reps just from being repetitive and consistent with how you're pitching the entire system. We will get into some of the subcategories for larger groups, but basically what that means is, okay, if we have athletes throwing, I would have athletes doing drills. I would have athletes possibly writing down notes, and I'm going to share a story about that shortly. I would have athletes doing plyometrics. I would have athletes maybe even doing ab exercises. So immediately, if I know I've got 30 kids, I can immediately think, how am I splitting this up? How can we break this down? And actually, one thing I will say too here is that this can get a little hairy, so you got to play this game a little bit, is when I establish subcategories. So one thing that I liked in wrestling growing up was we had circles that were ranked. And you were ranked on the circles based off of how many wins you have. It's not like the absolute best way, because sometimes there can be some spitefulness around it. But based off of the group that you get put in, sometimes some kids want to work really, really hard to get to that next group. And I think that that's something that you can use, maybe not necessarily just based off of PRs, but based off of work ethic, based off of consistency. You can piece people into those different groups as effectively as possible. And so this goes even further now from the subcategories is, are you guys lifting today? Are we going to get into the weight room for 30 minutes? Or are we going to make the excuse that it's hard to go to the weight room? Like, which one is it? Like that, what are we going to tell the kids? Well, it's a little hard for me to walk over there. I don't really feel like doing it. I'd much rather go home right now and start making dinner. Or, no, let's go lift for 30 minutes. Okay, what's the focus? What's the intensity? And then do you even have, weekly plan or homework, things like that? These are all pieces that I think as a coach, you can take each thing and say, all right, I can lay out my own thing. What's the throws days, okay? The cues, the reps, the lifting. What am I doing? Am I asking them to watch videos? Okay, anything along those lines. Now, I'm going to go into the specific here now if we have 3 to 30 kids. Okay, so anywhere from, I would probably argue most of us would have 3 to 5 at the low end. Okay, but if we have, I wanted to make it as large as possible. Okay, so if we have, let's say 20 kids, okay, none of this stuff changes. The first principle from yesterday was planning and preparation, okay? So when we talked about planning and preparation, this means when you're at home or if you're a teacher and you're in the middle of the day or you have a break or anything, you should have a plan laid out. You should be able to go to practice with a plan, okay? And they can see on this sheet what the plan is. So you're sitting there going, okay, what's the warm-up? Okay, what are we going to do for a warm-up? And later, my next presentation, I got a whole bunch of exercises that you'll see for a specific warm-up. The next thing that we're going to think about is, what are the groups? Okay, if I've got 20 kids, how am I splitting them up so that they're not fighting with one another, but they're actually successful within those groups and everybody's sort of rolling together? What's the flow of practice like? I remember I mentioned the Bill Belichick story of him on a clock. What's the flow of your practice? Is it a 7 to 10 minute timer? Is it a 15-minute block? Is it a 20-minute block? Is there something in your head that you just have set up? What is it with the flow? Is it the number of reps? So that everybody who's in different stations is able to piece off of that. And then what are the cues? What's the cues that you're going to have planned? Most of the kids are going to be working off of the similar, like 3 to 5 different cues that are going to be the same problems. Okay, so you want to think through that from that beginning stage, and when the kids show up, they're going to see this on a paper. Okay, one of the cool things with us at Garage Strength with our throws group is our high school kids come in, and the first thing that they're doing is they're going right to the manila folder. Where's my paper? Where's my paper? And then they have all their data, they have all their maxes, they have all their lifts that they have laid out. Now, the throwing in group management, this goes into what we were just talking about. What are the type of throws that they're going to be taking, okay? How many, and what's the purpose of the session? Do they know it's a slam day, or do they know it's a technique day? Okay, you have to communicate that to them. Don't get mad at a kid for fouling all the time, but then not tell this same individual, hey, let's focus on technique today. The number one goal is that you have 20 throws that you don't foul, or that you at least keep 1 foot in the freaking circle so you're not blowing out of the circle, right? Like that's just one purpose of a session. And then the training could be the lift. Are they doing an athlete day, which is like a plyometric day? Or are they going to be doing abs, whatever that might be? Okay, so this is like where I think you guys could take this and be like, all right, I have to bare minimum take this home, write this out, start my practices off of this. And you do this for one season, guess what? Now you have a full season built out and you have to do work on the front end, but now you have that full season built out that you can use next year, and you just tweak it and refine it based off of your kids. Okay, so I wanted to go into specific scenarios here where let's pretend that we have 4 groups of 6 kids, okay? So I tried to set this up, and we're going to have 2 slides with this. So if we have 4 groups of 6 kids, this means, and let's pretend the worst case scenario, we have 1 circle. So you have 1 shot circle or 1 discus circle, but it's just 1 circle for that specific day, okay? I would split the group up into, we are going to do throws, we are going to do special strength, so I'll talk about what that is. We're going to do jumps or plyometrics for athlete day. This could be jump and rope, this could be whatever. And we're going to have another group that starts at drills. Okay, so these are the four groups for this specific scenario. On this case, okay, if we go 20 minutes at each spot, that gives us 80 minutes, okay? You're taking those 6 kids in about 20 minutes if you are dialed in and as the leader controlling them so that they're not meandering around and clowning around too much. Hey, take your 3 standing throws. Our goal is 10 to 15 full throws by the end of this session. Okay, 10 to 15 full throws. Now, the special strength work could be they have a band attached to a wall behind them and they do a half turn here and they hit with a band. I have a video in here which I'm going to show you. It's an old video, but it has some interesting stuff. You could use something like this where you have a wall and you're just taking a standing throw into the wall. Maybe it's 4 sets of 10, okay? Athlete day, jumping rope, I want 4 sets of jump rope for 20 seconds. Okay, drills, what are the specific drills that we can focus on in that case? Now, if we have, in this case here, the special strength and the athlete day there. Let's pretend that we don't want to do anything with special strength stuff, and we don't want to do anything lifting wise or with plyometrics. Another way that could flow is that you set up and you say, okay, throws, note taking and visualization. And this is where I want to talk about this, is that I've talked about this in the past. So I trained a freestyle wrestler named Nick Wazowski, and he was a 2-time world bronze medalist, and he would go to Nittany Lion Wrestling Club at Penn State and wrestle, and I would go up and meet with him there. So I got to be around Cale Sanderson, who is probably the best collegiate coach in possibly all sports ever, with the number of wins he's had and NCAA titles. And what they would do at practice is they would write down their favorite shot on offense, okay? You got to write it 100 times. Okay, I want to hit a snap into a double leg, and snap, blast, double, snap, blast, double. And while they're doing that, they have to think through a snap into a blast double. And it sounds hokey, it sounds weird, it sounds different, but guess what? They're different, they win. And it's one of those things, it's like, hey, and the first couple times when you have high school kids doing this, they're like, this is lame, this is corny. But we have social media, okay? We have access to some of the best athletes in the world. Will show you on a daily basis what they're doing. You can see what LeBron James is doing every day. Like, that is an unbelievable resource. I'm not saying LeBron James is writing down notes and stuff like that. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, I'm not sure. But you can find athletes. I can tell you right now, the high jump, the woman from Australia, I forget her name right now off the top of my head. She's won the Diamond League. She's an Olympic champion. She is well known for writing down notes in the middle of her competition, going in and then thinking through how she's approaching, the bar. Take videos of her doing that and say, look at this girl, what she does. She's the best and the best. Try to find other examples of high-level athletes from social media and show the kid how important it can be to write down notes and to visualize. And that's when you will get more buy-in. Okay, so you can pitch it, and it will take time. It won't happen overnight. It might take you 5 years. But all of a sudden, when you have a kid who's done it for 4 years and they're really, really good, everybody buys in. It takes time. Change your time horizon with all of this stuff. So going back to this, you got throws, you got your note-taking and visualization, you got your drills, okay? And then we would have abs or rotational exercises. So like weird jumps, weird ab exercises that kids love to do just because they're different. So that's how I would set that up on a day that would be a little bit different from the previous day. Now, this is where, we talked about this stuff yesterday. I wanted to bring this back up just real quick. Is like, this is the example for anybody who wasn't here yesterday. We talked about the slam days. Typically, you would do 15 to 20 throws. If you're in this time crunch, you got 24 to 30 kids, you might only get 10 to 15 really hard throws. That might happen based off of a larger group and a smaller setting with less circles. If you have more circles or you got a driveway that you can paint on, get more circles in and get that done. The range days, that's where we're setting that 80 to 90% range. It could be 82 to 88%. And the kids are just trying to throw as many times in that specific range. Okay, so this is going into drill throw day where it's basically do 3 to 5 drills, then take a throw. Or do 20 to 50 drills and then take 10 throws. We talked about this stuff yesterday. Then the mock meets. I'm going to talk about mock meets as far as group management as well shortly. Now, I have too much text in here. This is bad. This would be an example of things that you can pull from, like direct cases for the drills, okay? Back of the circle, ankle drill. Here, you're pausing, and you're just pausing. You're getting kids to look like they're the freaking Karate Kid in practice. Hey, 5 sets of 30 seconds. Guess what? Now, just the 5 sets of 30 seconds is giving you, 8 minutes possibly if you're factoring in rest. Pause with the South African drill. That could be here, and then they come forward and they're here. These are easy drills. You know, yesterday if you were in the glide presentation, I talked about small circle drills, okay? A drills, drop drills, anything like that. Special strength group, and this we will see the video here. You'll have working on the middle of the front. Let's say you do standing medicine ball throws into a wall, side medicine ball throws, dumbbell throws, kettlebell throws, anything that you can possibly throw, you can do it. Athlete group here, the jumps, they can do box jumps, hurdle hops, skips, jump lunges. A big complaint that I get is why we can't teach snatches or cleans. Like I just can't do it. I don't have the time. This is the time. You got 20 minutes every day. Have them learn how to clean, and it might take 3 months. But guess what? Now all of a sudden, you don't have to teach them how to clean in the weight room because they're doing it at practice and they're learning a complex movement. So those are some examples there. Now this is where I wanted to talk about if I try to prioritize this with our high school kids, or at least talking to our on-site coach, Sam Weeks, about this, is like, if it's packed in our gym and we don't have, we only have one circle in the gym when it's really cold outside, the closer that we get to big comps, so right now we got 2 high school girls throwing, 46 plus. We're 3 to 4 weeks out from indoor states. We want them to throw first. The athletes that are 25 on the women's side, let's say they're throwing 20 to 35 feet, well, 20 to 30 feet, somewhere in there, I would say that they throw second, okay? That only because the older girls that are throwing further will get impacted a little bit more. Somebody who's not as good yet, they can do other things before throwing. The drill group, this would be, the top group gets a very, very specific problem. Okay, this kid he knee sweeps, he's got to get used to sweeping with a wide sweep. Okay, whereas the lower group, they can actually just do full spins the whole time and just get comfortable learning the full movement. So the older kids that have more reps, you focus on one specific thing, 2 specific things. The younger kids, just spin. It's a race to 5,000 reps. Whoever gets to 5,000 reps is likely going to throw a lot further. So if we can get as many reps in as possible, that's what we're going to do. And then 40, so one thing here I like to do too is I'll say 45 to 50 drills is usually equal to about 12 to 15 throws, time-wise and skill-wise. And I like to think about that when planning out a session. Does that make sense? Okay, now special strength, this would be the top group. We would do, they might start with special strength earlier in the year. So let's say you're going to the outdoor season and you got a kid who's a 50 to 55 footer, or a girl who's a 35 to 40 footer, right? Like they're gonna start with special strength earlier in the year. They'll do it first. That's sort of like they're buying, all right, I'll do med ball throws first while the other kids get to throw first, or the other kids get to do something else. The lower groups would be doing that first later on in the year because they might not be prepping for districts or regionals or states. The athlete group, this is where we would substitute for abs or core twice a week. So athlete day at least once a week. Some of the other days in the planning, it would just be instead of athlete day, it's abs and core. The top group, after throws, they would do their abs or their jumps after throwing. The lower group would be before throwing, and then some examples here would be about 10 sets here, about 3 sets of 10 with the special strength, and those are comparable to the 15 throws and about the 50 drills. So you got skips, jump rope, box jumps, side unilateral jumps. In my next presentation, you're going to get about 35 exercises, so don't leave here thinking, like literally any video I've filmed over the last 8 months we have in the next presentation. So you'll have plenty of ideas for what you can do in that section. And if you subscribe to Garage Strength on YouTube, you'll get more. Okay, this is like my first YouTube video, so bear with me. I had more hair too. This is just random stuff that I would do with kids at the gym. The gym is actually my parents' garage. That was a chain throw. This would be a dumbbell. These are examples of kids love doing this stuff. I should have had my dad was a little mad with where I was throwing, so I had to throw a little flatter for this video. But literally, if you go on Facebook Marketplace, and if you're fortunate to be in a position where you can purchase some dumbbells, you can get dumbbells pretty cheap on Facebook Marketplace. You can also find rocks everywhere. You can go to the quarry and get some rocks. It's okay to throw them. And kids love doing that. And a real quick aside is we actually had a shirt during this time frame where kids would wear the shirt. It said, "We throw rocks for fun." And it's like, kids love that shit. Now this would be more of almost like the special strength type stuff. Same with this as well. This would be like you get a barbell, you put it in a corner. But these are all drills and examples of things that you can do. I actually prefer now holding the top almost with like this type of grip. Yeah, so that was just some quick examples that I wanted to share there. Whoops. Let's see. Okay, there we go. All right, so one of the things I wanted to bring up here too was assignments, like things that you can actually do with kids that they can contribute to the group in some manner, right? And I talked about measuring, and the aspect of success is based around what you're measuring, right? And so some of the things that we can do is if you got a group of 30 kids and you say, "Hey, I want you to measure these 3 ranges out." So let's say you have a group of ranges. So the way I would establish a range for a large group would say 82 to 88% of 40 feet, 82 to 88% of 50 feet. And then if you've got a bomber or maybe a little bit less PRs, then you change that. So you can actually assign kids to measure out the ranges, okay? You can also assign kids, hey, when you throw, you walk out this way, and if you have your back turned to the circle, Dane's gonna freaking scream at you. Make sure you walk out, you pay attention to the circle, and you get to mark or say if the next person gets into the range or not, and you can create a scoreboard, okay? Then they can also mark, they can retrieve the shots, but they can also contribute to the scoreboard. So now you have, let's say, 5 kids competing. There's a scoreboard out there. It's a whiteboard that you're writing on, and whoever has the most tallies into the range at the end of the 15 throws wins. Okay, same thing with the slam session. Now you can have kids marking or kids measuring. They're contributing, and you might have a kid who is a bomber competing in like the slam session or the mock meet, and maybe you have a younger kid that now they get to get taken under that kid's wing because they're marking or they're measuring, anything along those lines. And same thing for those mock meets. I think that's important to use kids in a sense of like, hey, I want you guys to take part in the process. This is what it means to be really good at throwing. You measure your throws, you have an idea where you're moving, but you also focus on your technique on these range days, and this is how we try to contribute to the whole team setting. Okay, I want to get into this relatively quickly. This would be a perfect case scenario for a lift, okay? This is like all stars align, we get to throw for an hour, we get to lift for an hour. This is not reality though, okay? Most cases, you're able to lift for maybe 30 minutes. So the easiest way is if we remember, when we're in the group, we talked about they're outside, they could do some clean progressions or snatch progressions or some mobility work. When we got up into the weight room, guys, you got 5 minutes and we're gonna do some mobility work. Then we're gonna do some type of clean, let's say clean trap bar jumps, dumbbell snatch, anything along those lines. Something explosive. And instead of it, let's pretend that we only have 30 minutes. This is 5. Okay, once that 5-minute timer is up, now we go into the dumbbell snatch or the clean or the trap bar jumps. Okay, and we're gonna say that that's gonna be, let's pretend 12 to 15 minutes. They get 8 sets and they get a minute rest. They get 1 minute rest on 8 sets. They get now 8 sets done of clean. And then as soon as that's done, we got 12 minutes of back squats. You're gonna do 3 sets of 5 with a minute and a half rest. Okay, and then you apologize to the parents for being slightly late after practice and everybody's gonna be fine. And now they get that done. And then you say, hey, When you guys go home, I want you to watch, Joe Kovacs's Instagram post or Krauser's training video on YouTube. And while you're watching it, I want you to do 50 push-ups or 50 crunches or 50 clap push-ups or anything along those lines. Instead of saying kids don't want to do the work, give it to the kids every single day for a year. Tell them exactly what to do. And then if it's been a year and they still aren't listening to you, either your message is not the best, or maybe then I'll listen a little bit about complaining about them being lazy. But I guarantee you, if you're saying every single day to these kids, hey, I want you to do 50 push-ups while you're watching this person throw. Go watch Val Ullman's training video. Go watch Maggie do a technical analysis. Go watch, again, Throws You videos, whatever it is. Be part of the sport, and while you're doing that, every 2 to 3 minutes, do 10 push-ups. And now all of a sudden, this 80-minute lift, they can do in 30 to 35 minutes here. So they're doing 5 minutes here. Once they get up here, 12 to 15, 12 to 15 here. And then they can do their hypertrophy work at home. So push-ups, crunches, give them a band, whatever, do some tricep work. Okay, this is where I always recommend, if you're teaching cleans, shorter time frame if time is a problem, shorter rest periods if you have time as a problem. Squats or benches, if time is a problem, squats or benches should have a superset. Okay, if you're squatting, they can do plyometrics, they can do a box jump for a set of 3, or they could do crunches, and they'll feel their abs a little more when they're squatting, so you can superset it with something easy. Okay, I like using on a bench, let's say we do benches, okay, we'll do reverse flies. We'll do bench press or incline or dumbbell, we'll do pull-ups, whatever that might be. And if we have the time, I would say accessory work is without a rest period. And then we can get into another thing here is if they're in the weight room, hey, if we're squatting, in between squats, I want you to do these specific drills, just so you're a little more dialed in. And you're gonna load the plates, you're gonna be the spotter, you're gonna lift, and then it cycles, and this is the position. This person now, after they lift, becomes the spotter. The person after the spotter becomes the plate loader. So now everybody has some sense of accountability, and we're clear on what we want from these athletes. And we've got to do it on a daily basis. I shared this with you guys yesterday. I wanted to show you how I would set this up, where it's like, maybe you do a hang clean, let's say 5 sets of 2, and they get a minute and a half rest, or a minute rest. Back squat, 3 sets of 5, a minute and a half to 2 minutes rest, and then some posterior chain work that maybe they do that at home. This would be the ideas from the athlete day, and then the bench day. So you guys did see this yesterday. Okay. Does anybody have any pictures? Geez, anybody have any questions about that, or want to see one of those other slides again? I wanted to talk a little bit about how we would set up, like organizing the group and then getting them to peak at the right time, just on a bare bones topic. Mainly because I get the question a lot, like, hey, my kids will throw really far early in the year, and then come June or the end of May, they're not throwing as far. And I think that's a common issue. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that when kids get outside in April and it's warm and everybody's excited, and there's one day where it's warm, it's like pent up energy, okay? So I think to try and alleviate that issue, one thing that I'll do, and these are basically 3 types of options that I have, is we'll do a traditional deload where we do mock meets every Friday during the season. So every Friday we're gonna do that. Now once invitationals start, we use the invitational as a mock meet. We'll have 1 week where we deload in the weight room or even at practice, and we'll say, hey, we're gonna be done practice today by 4:45, and we'll do that for about 3 days straight to take stress off. And then we try and get them to throw in a mock meet or at an invitational, and do this early in the year and see if they get a good result from taking the deload, meaning they're doing less work. And if it works, we try to do that again later in the year. If it doesn't work, we don't deload with that individual. That would be in that very traditional week setting. Another way would be that same person, maybe if we're talking about we cut practice down to an hour and a half. We might do that. We deload, and then 2 to 3 weeks after the deload, when we're doing traditional stuff, we notice, hey, 2 weeks later, this kid threw really far, but when we deloaded, he threw like crap. Okay, well, that's how we're going to peak him this year, is like we're going to deload 3 weeks out from states, and then by the time he gets to states, we're going to have tension back on that athlete for 2 to 3 weeks. Some of the other kids might be deloading, but he's not, and that's where he competes the best. And then the last thing, an easy one would be 6 days out, you do a big bench after a slam session. 4 days out, you do a big squat and a clean pull. And then 2 days out, you do a drill and throw, and then they're ready to compete. This is what we used for Alex Rhodes this year at World Champs. He got third. It's like a 6.42 peak. It's this stuff is like pretty advanced, so I don't know how much this would apply to anybody who's probably 10th grade or below. I don't think would necessarily need to worry about this. Okay, does anybody have any questions about all this stuff with group management? Yeah.
Okay, so let's say like someone meets Tom and you're in the States, okay, and you guys think it's good enough to maybe make it the outdoor, Midwest be the champions. They don't have that no more. Ohio, since COVID, they have not up so far. How do you get that peak to last for 3 or 4 weeks when you're doing the big match? Or maybe make a world season?
So you're asking, let's pretend that you have a kid who could win a high school, she could win high school states, and then you want her to go top 5 at high school nationals. What I would do, and how much time would you say is between those two events?
I mean, it could be up to a month.
Yeah, so what I would say is, I think it depends on the athlete. Like there's some chicks right now throwing 50 feet and they could go to states and get an 80% throw and win. And if that's the case, then you just train through it as like, honestly, I have a kid right now, a swimmer right now, who will set the state records in the 100 back and the 100 breast. And we are not even thinking about states, as crazy as it is. He's training right through to high school nationals because he's got to go top 3. So like, he's just full throttle lifting. His yardage in the pool is not changing. And it's the same thing in my mind. It's the same thing for the thrower. It's like, now, most high school kids aren't in that situation. Most high school kids, it's like, we got to just get them there. We got to get them to districts. We got to get them to states. So that's where I like to go and look at earlier in the season. And I'll say, in the case with, well, let me answer your question with the case of the stud. I would try and back off. Like, let's say the state meet is on Saturday. Back off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And it's like a fake deload. It's like, all right, it's just a couple days. You still go out, you take a couple throws. Maybe they lift on Wednesday, and you just got 2 days off. And they'll still feel good. They'll still throw far. Then you would have your real peak leading into nationals, if that's the priority, is trying to win that. But this goes back to the measuring stuff. I think if you're measuring at practice and you're clear about the goals, like we have kids right now. It's like my whole goal is to get one kid to be the top 5 kid on his high school team so that he's a starting varsity scorer. And then we have other kids that want to throw 65 feet. So it's like just relative to that individual. That's how I would handle that though with states and into nationals.
Up till now, I just kind of like look at the kid and say, okay, let's just have a goal next region. So maybe peak in the districts so they can get out to regional.
Yeah.
And you got the other ones that I think do well at nationals, so we just kind of work through state because if they're good enough for nationals, they're going to do well for state.
Yeah.
Just kind of work back that way.
Yeah, I think that's sound. That's good. I forget, there was something I was going to say off of that, but I forget what it was. Anybody else have questions on the group management? Yeah.
How do you manage throwers of vastly different skill levels and knowledge level? Like this year, I'm going to have 2 boy throwers, throw like 55, but then the rest of the group is they just start to throw.
Right.
Like an hour block.
How many kids is it?
It'll be about 10.
How many circles do you have?
1.
So you just have one. So that's where I would say I think it's very important for younger kids or maybe not as talented kids to see what another kid is doing. So I like giving a cue and saying, there, did you see what he did here on the sweep or on coming off the left? Or, hey, a lot of younger kids, they stay on their left foot so they keep rotating. When you get better, you get off of the left foot sooner. So just pointing that out, do you see John does this? You could do this a little bit better. But then I also think that it's important to get the kids that are good to have some sense of humility and to be like, hey, can you watch this kid throw? Give him a pointer. On his 10th throw, just say something to him like, hey, try and hold your left arm back. I think that's really important. And that's where I would say, let's say you have the one circle, you have two groups of 5, you have this group over here doing drills and watching, and this group is throwing, and then they switch. But at the same time, if they're within a space, like sometimes there's a circle here and there's a chain link fence. Use the fence to set up bands and stuff like that, and then they can still watch, as long as they're not disruptive. That's another thing, is just making sure. And if you're playing music, I think, I didn't even mention that. I think if you're playing music and you have a rule that nobody can switch the songs, unless it's like the last throw and you're getting a clap going, then you can put on your hype song, whatever. But most of the time, I would say you can't change any of the music. You get to play a playlist, everybody can contribute, so that helps keep disruptiveness a little bit lower. And then you're able to get, if you have a good kid that is a good kid that's also a good kid, who will help the younger kids, I think is big. I think that's huge. Because you're gonna be at a meet where you might be over at Discus and these kids are throwing shot and you can't see them, and then that pays off. So that's how I like to do that. And like, honestly, we have our guys we have guys that have been in the Olympics multiple times who will train with kids that are throwing 100 feet and in the same session. And it's an expectation, like, yo, say something to them. It's not ignore them. It's like, hey, just think about, one thing when I was your age, this helped me. And those kids like eat that shit up.
It's kind of like the theory, you don't really know it until you teach it.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Yeah.
You can watch them and how they explain it and how they teach it, you're going to say, he's got it.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. I think that's huge. Yeah, I would use that to your advantage. I don't know if that helps. Anybody else?
I have a question about your peak for the throws, 6 days out being the big bench. What does that look like, a big bench with a big squat?
Okay, so big bench, let's say, I'll use Alex's numbers just because he's crazy. So this is exactly what he did, okay? So 6 days out, we do pad bench when we peak. So we'll put a pad, like an AirX pad, takes it off, and we'll do anywhere from 3 to 5 reps and we'll time it. So Alex's best bench is 540. He did 170K, which is about 373 pounds. So he did on this, 2 sets of 5, timed like real fast. So, I'm saying big bench. It's heavy. It's heavier than, it's a pretty decent percentage, around a little bit less than 80%. 2 sets of 3 to 5. The slam session for him was just 10 throws. He did a warm-up like he was competing. Then he sat for a little bit, and then he took 2 warm-ups, sat again, and then he took his throws like he was in the comp. So that was first, and then we benched second. The squat was again about 75 to 80%, and he did doubles, okay? But he started the session off he did 2 sets of 2 clean pulls with let's say his best clean's 405 right now. He's getting older, so it's not that high, but it would be, 315 was, again, close to 80%. I think 80% is a good number where they feel the weight, but it doesn't cause a lot of fatigue. But the range day with him was he had to get 5 to 6 throws in that range area, which was between 60 and 65 meters. So you just say, hey, I want 6 throws, and then we're good. 6 throws, we're good. Then we're going to go in. You're going to do 2 sets of clean pulls, 2 sets of squats, and we're done. And then the 2 days, I did have a video of him talking through his drills at Worlds, but he's here, and he just like does these drills where he's like, here, boom, and that was his drill. And like that was it. So that day, that's what he did, about 15 to 20 throws, or drills, 15 to 20 drills. He took 1 throw and it was like 68. It was an absolute nuke, and we were like, dude, it's on. He's gonna medal. Like immediately. And this was all, like it was clear as day, like he was feeling it. So it's like, I think oftentimes we back off of kids, especially high school kids, and we just take all the training off of them. And then they go in the circle and they almost feel like they're lost. They're like uncoordinated. So I think like if you have a kid that you are actually thinking about peaking them, I tend to be more aggressive with it, with the weights. Because Sam's like that. So Sam did a traditional peak Mattis this year, and he threw horrible at Worlds, and I think I'm never doing it again because this is like the 3rd time it's happened. He was like, dude, I just felt like he's like, I felt like a noodle. I had nothing in my muscles. It's a weird feeling, but I think high school kids relate to it in the sense that they will almost, I also think some high school kids, if they're not dealing with the mock meets and the pressure, when they get into a high pressure environment, their anxiety gets so high, it like shuts down everything. So that's where I do think knowing when the mock meet is will help that kid too. I think that has a big impact on peaking for high school because they just haven't competed that much. Like if you really think about it, at the end of a career, a high school career, you're only really going to get into, high pressure situations maybe 20 times in your career. Like that's not that many times for them to really learn how to handle the stress.
When you say you go how many throws?
We'll do 2 to 3 warm-ups like a comp. I sometimes will change the warm-up structure, like if they're at a high school meet, and we'll just flip it. No, warm-ups is done now, because you never know what a high school official is going to do. And then and instead of complaining, they just got to adapt and deal with it, and they might do drills on the side, and then they're getting 6 throws. Now we'll say if typically it's 6, sometimes we'll do 3 and then 3, but it's usually 6. And if somebody's like ripping bombs, we might do 1 bonus round where it's like, okay, this is like the showdown between these 3. They get 1 bonus throw, which they're actually doing something sort of similar to this at the world level now, where they have they bring extra people to the final, and then they cut the final as you go through. And it makes it a little more entertaining. But usually just 6 throws.
You ever do one throw meets?
In practice, I do not.
You're preparing for it. Okay, get your warm up in, you get 1 throw.
Sometimes we'll say like we'll make like weird bets where it's like, all right, if you throw this on this throw, I'll buy you a burrito from Chipotle. But not like a true mock meet. I would feel guilty because they pay to come to see me. So if they got in the car and they're like, I took 1 throw at practice for a mock meet, the mom's gonna be like, what am I paying for? Yeah.
Your range days, so when you're saying like 6 in the range or whatever, you stay out till you hit the 6, or you get 6 to hit the range?
I would say this. Further out, you got to get it in the range. If you're getting close to a meet and you're counting like, okay, I only want you to take 15 throws. I only want you to take 20 throws. I would cut it at 15, but if you see a kid is not dialing it back, and 99 times out of 100, it's dudes. Women will put it in the range, and they'll get dialed in. It's the meathead guys, I'm trying to do it. You're not trying to do anything. You're trying to throw it as hard as you can. So the closer they are to a meet, I would limit the throws. The further out, I'd be like, no, I'll be out here for 2 hours if you're going to not listen. In that case, yeah. Anybody else on questions on the group management? Okay. So the next presentation I'm doing is it's all rotational exercises and mobility stuff, and I had issues with some of the GIFs, the images loading on the presentation. Some of them loaded, some of them didn't, so I just loaded YouTube videos. So you're going to get a lot of exercises in the next presentation that you can use in these situations that I think will be worthwhile as well. Any questions or anything?
Coaching coaches, more content in the world for peaking. I've met a lot of coaches who
From Throws U.
have lost their minds on concepts of, I peak like this and it works, but it's, if you know things about things like, it works just because it works, not because there's actual method.
Right.
Any kind of knowledge behind it.
Yeah.
Because I have a swim coach now that's cut off lifting for 2 months.
Dude, and that's the most annoying thing. Is it's like, yeah, that's
not peaking, that's
distance runners will do that, swimmers will do that, and it's like you're totally removing this, and you're not thinking about it as a tool, and then they get hurt, 3 weeks out. It's like you haven't been doing any resistance training at all, and it's not like you're trying to get them to back squat 500 pounds.
Yeah, I think that there just needs more content, because kids will find it, then they'll start checking their coaches. I found that out now,
Yeah.
The more we, arm kids with knowledge, the more they start challenging.
Yeah.
Which is great, because we should.
Yeah.
And some of these coaches,
I think
they're doing some crazy stuff.
I think the benefit we have is so I coach a lot of weightlifters. So weightlifting is like it's unique in the sense that I'll have some kids. I have a kid right now, if you follow us, Ryan, who's a tall, thinner kid, but he's a phenom. This kid refuses to take a traditional deload, and we tried it with him, and he just was like he would lift terribly. We'll be 2 days out, and he'll be front squatting 500 pounds, and then lifts like an absolute dog. So I learned that's how he likes it. Now the one girl we have who's heavier, she wants she lifts much better like a traditional style, and I think that's a benefit with us is like because of weightlifting and throwing, it helps too then with the football guys because sometimes football coaches are similar. They'll be like, oh, we should stop lifting now. The season's starting in the first 4 weeks, they're not lifting, but now we've got a pretty good rapport in this case of like how to peak a football player in a non-traditional sense, I guess. So I'll keep that in mind because I do think it's valuable. I also think if you're measuring things, it makes it easier to see how to do it. If you're measuring, so we'll measure vertical jump, we'll measure broad jumps, we'll measure the time benches. It's interesting because my son right now is doing pad benches, and he'll come home and be, Dad, I did 235 for 3 pad bench at 2.69 seconds. Last week I got at like 2.9, and it's cool because now he's bought into it and he knows he's in good shape because of the speed. The weight hasn't changed, the speed has changed, and that's I think that's important. Yeah, I'll try to do that. I like that. I love the peaking stuff because it's like an art in a lot of cases. And even in throws, it's the implements too. You're changing implements, so that has an impact.